back to Rev and Restore. My name's Keith, and in today's video I'm going to be replacing the tired old battery on my TVR Tamora. But the battery replacement is pretty much the same as the Sagaris, the Tuscan, the T350 and the Tamora. They all share a very, very similar chassis, architecture and everything like that. Now interestingly, my battery on the Tamora was last replaced in April 2015, so it's lasted almost 10 years, which is quite remarkable really. That must have been a well looked after battery. Prior to that, it was replaced in 2011. So to replace the battery on the TVR is a little bit tricky. So today I'm going to take you through how I've done it, and hopefully that'll be useful to someone else when you come round to doing this job. Normally battery replacements are a DIY job, but it's just a little bit more tricky on the TVR. So hopefully this video will help you. Right, I think the time has come to change the battery. So I keep it on the battery charge maintainer, battery tender, whatever you want to call it, when it's not being used. It's a cold day today, but it's not below freezing. 5.5 degrees in the garage. But even though the battery's been kept on the maintainer, it really doesn't sound great when you turn it over. It's a little bit sluggish. So I did test the battery recently and it wasn't great, so let's have a listen. So yeah, it starts up okay, but you can just hear it's just a little bit slow turning over, and that is the battery fully charged. So I'm going to get it moved around into position, we'll get it jacked up, get the near side front wheel off, and let's get the battery out. Right, so first job, just to make it easy for ourselves, just on this side, the side we're jacking up, I've driven onto a block of wood. It's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick. Just gives you a bit more room to get the jack underneath. The jack goes not on the frontmost part of the chassis, it goes just behind the battery tray. So let's get it jacked up, get the wheel off. Right, let's first disconnect the battery terminals. We'll start with the negative first. The reason we do that is if we happen to touch the tool on the bodywork, well, bodywork doesn't matter on a TVR because it's plastic or fiberglass, but if we were to touch metal on the chassis, it wouldn't arc out. So there we go, let's get our negative terminal out of the way. Positive one, a little bit more difficult to get to. And of course now the negative's disconnected. If we were to touch with a positive, it wouldn't matter now. It's a nice safe way of doing it. Right, it's quite a tight fit that. There we go. So next thing we need to do, you see the battery's not particularly secure. There is a clamp, don't know whether you'll see it, just down in this corner here. Not actually very effective, it's not doing much, but we'll get that clamp out. I'll put a bit of penetrating fluid on it first. So that just clamps on the shoulder on the battery to hold it down. Now that should be our battery ready to come out. A little bit fiddly. Sorry about that, not much room in here. The good news is that battery tray is in really good nick. What can happen, especially when the battery leaks acid, when it starts to deteriorate, that does no good for the powder coating or metal work, and that's what a prone place to rust. So we've got a battery out there, let's get it up on the bench. Right, so there we go. Someone's added this bit of like foam over the top here. That's obviously not standard, but I think they've done it to give a bit of protection for the positive terminal there. So it's not held on very neatly. I'm probably going to put it back on again. So yeah, need to try and work out what battery this is. I think it's an 072. Need to double check that. And there's the bit that goes on the inner wing, just in front of the battery. Right, this gets slightly confusing on what battery to use. So I've looked in the Graham Varley manual, which is written for a TVR Sagaris, but it's another T-Series car, very much the same as the Tamora. And the Graham Varley manual lists an 069 for, I think it says earlier cars, or an 036 for later cars. The confusing thing there is the orientation of the terminals are the other way around as far as I know. So the 069 positive terminal on the left, and the 036 is the other way around. So the battery cabling must be different. Although, looking underneath there, you could probably swap them around. There's enough length in the cables to be able to do that. Now, this battery, I've had a look back through the history, is a VBY8, which when I cross-reference it, cross-references to an 069 battery. And that's been replaced twice. Twice that's been a VBY08. The only problem I found is where you'd have seen when I first took that battery out, it was actually a little bit loose. The clamp downs on either side are too low on the chassis, so they're a few mil under here, so that it's actually just pushing against the clamp downs rather than clamping it down. This side it should slot underneath, and then on this side there's that hold down that goes in there to tighten it down. Now these are 30 mil high. They could probably do with being about 25, 28. They're just too high. So I need to go and measure that up. So I've been doing a bit of research on the batteries, trying to see which one I need. This appears to be, when I do all the cross-referencing on part numbers, is an 069 battery, or Halford's list it as an 072/069. So I assume they're very, very similar. And they've probably consolidated the part numbers over time. The important bits, I've written it down here. So I need length, so that's this way, 254 millimeters, but we could go plus probably about another 10 there if the standoffs were lower, because they'll fit under properly. So I'll be looking for a battery of that. Height is 205 on this battery, and the width is 175, which is the width along there. It's a 480 amp battery, and it's 70 amp hours. So I'm going to go with my measurements in hand. Pretty sure if there's an 069 battery down there or 072, that should be the right one, but I'm just going to take a measuring tape with me just in case. Right, so I'm back from the car part shop. In the UK, there's a chain of car parts and accessory stores called Halfords, or Halfords as some people like to call it. They're actually pretty useful because they're open 7 days a week. They're open on bank holidays. Even during COVID they were open because they're seen as an essential service. So they are quite useful, that something goes wrong with your car, there'll be a Halford store open somewhere where you can go and get the parts. So I went with the 069 battery, which is exactly the one it lists in the Graham Varley manual. The Graham Varley manual, and it's also a cross-reference for this battery here. However, it is slightly different. So in terms of proportions, this one is 250 mil long, and then with the standoffs as well, about 260. So 250 and then about 260 with a standoff. So that's right. It's this one's slightly wider with the standoffs. With the width, we're on 175, and this one's 175 as well. And the overall height, so 205 here, 205 there, but the biggest difference is you'll notice the terminals on this battery in that 205mm height are included in the overall height, whereas on here they're on top. They're about an extra 30mm. So there was plenty of room above, but it's probably going to be quite tight now. I'll have to fit it and see. At the end of the day, if it doesn't fit, I can take it back and try and get a battery somewhere else. But that is the right battery for the car. Good thing to point out is obviously battery technology improves over the years. This is a calcium battery. I'm not sure, this one says a calcium battery as well, although Banner, not sure that they are the best batteries in the world. Not even sure who makes Halford's ones, but they do have UASA batteries on the shelf as well, so I suspect this is probably produced by UASA and maybe not up to the spec, because UASA batteries are a premium battery. This has got a 4-year guarantee with it, but it is an upgrade. So we've got 600 cold cranking amps here, EN, and this one's 480 EN. So that's just an improvement in battery technology over the years. So that's an extra 120 amps cranking power. This one's got a reserve capacity of 70 amp hours. This one's 72. So yeah, pretty good. It's also rated for sort of charge retention, water loss, vibration, endurance. So it should be an upgrade on the battery. But I need to make sure it fits. This is the tray which actually goes on the chassis, which holds the battery in. So thankfully it's in quite good condition, no corrosion there. And while we're here, I thought I would take the opportunity to clean up all around the battery tray on the chassis and the cables and everything else. So price wise, this battery is 126 British pounds. If American dollars, that equates to I think $153. So not overly expensive. And thankfully, because I used to work in the trade, I have a Halford's trade card, which gives you about 20% off. So that was £126 on the shelf. I paid £100 and 74p, I think it was. So like I say, I have cleaned up inside as well. So if we look inside here, it's all lovely and clean. It's actually in really, really good condition. I have waxed, so I've used a bit of built Hamber Dynax UC up in the corners, because that's where they tend to corrode on the frame rails. But as you can see, that is all in really, really good condition. I do have to fit in this piece here, which go like that. So the battery sits on this aluminium plate here. There we go. We'll get that new battery in, and hopefully, because those standoffs are, I didn't actually show it, the standoffs are slightly lower on this battery, only by a few mil. So that is bang on 30mm, and with this one it's about 28. What also might have been stopping it going down as well is, I don't know whether that was done from new, but obviously someone's added a bit of foam on the bottom of there just to, I guess, just to protect it, but that would be making a millimetre or two difference as well. So I've cleaned up all the cables, cleaned up all the grease. I hate it when people put copious amounts of grease on the cables. It's really unnecessary. Bit of grease in there to stop corrosion, but you don't need to leather it on there. And as far as the protection on the side, I'm not going to refit that bit of foam that they've put on there. Don't know why they put it on there. It doesn't seem to do anything. All around here is fiberglass, so you haven't got to worry about anything touching anything. And obviously we've got the heat protection from the exhaust there. There we go, so the fit looks okay. In fact, actually, that looks better than the last. It looks like we should be able to get our clamp on quite nicely there. I think the reason it's not going right under that standoff at the other end is because of that bit of foam that's been put on the bottom. So I might actually take that off, because otherwise it's not really held down properly. Yeah, let me take that off. Right, so to get that battery to fit in properly underneath the stands off at either end, I've had to get the Dremel out. I've had to thin this edge by probably a couple of millimetres, so it will go under this end. The other end is fine, it's going to go under the clamp, no problem. But I mean the battery was just pretty much loose in there before, so I've used a Dremel, just gone along, and as you can see I've taken that edge down by probably 1.5mm, 2 mil. Yes, it fits properly now. So I am right under on that end now. As you can see, that won't lift now. And I've got the correct space in this end now to be able to get my clamp in down there. Bit fiddly to get to. Important note that when going back together we do it in reverse. That's positive terminal on first. As you can see now, that battery is perfectly safe and secure in there. So really important to make sure we get our cable routing nice and nice and neat. We don't want any chafing. Right, very quick word of warning. When I connected up the negative terminal, the windows started doing up with the keys inside the car, and the alarm started going off. So before you connect it back up, make sure the door's open, you've got your keys in hand, because it is probably going to lock itself and wind the windows up, as I've just found out. Luckily I heard the window motor going, and I very quickly disconnected again and went round. This negative cable is really long, much longer than it needs to be. That's why I said earlier, I think you could probably fit a battery with the terminals in the opposite orientation, so the negative on that side, you see you probably got enough for the positive to come over this side if you really wanted to. Right, just to note, I just went to fit the big black cover and the battery was still a little bit too far forward, so I've undone the clamps again, managed to move it back probably another centimetre or so. As you can see from the markings on the old cable, that cover that comes down here actually touches it, and it might not have been good before because that battery wasn't actually clamped down, so it would have potentially been moving backwards and forwards. Now it's tightly clamped in, so there's going to be no movement there. And then finally we've got this black cover to go on, which in true TVR fashion is held on with a cable tie. Wouldn't be a TVR without your cable tie, would it? so last sense check, terminals are both tight. It's all clamped down nicely. There's no risk of shorting out anywhere. Although that heat shield in there is metallic. I'm sure it's not going to conduct, but that is probably why the last person put that bit of foam over the end, so I might just reinsert that foam just for peace of mind. So yeah, I was wondering why they bothered to put this piece of foam in. I'm sure it's not a standard fit item, although you never know. There we go. I guess either way it just gives a little bit of added protection, doesn't it? There's no chance of this is all fiberglass, but yeah, that heat shield is metallic, although I very much doubt that would conduct electricity. But just for that 100% peace of mind, we've got a bit of insulation between the two. There we go. Last check. Yeah. Right, there we are. Battery in. Did feel an unnecessarily difficult job, but yeah, like most things on cars like this, occasionally requires a bit of tweaking and a bit of adjustment, but compared to how the battery was before, that is nicely held in now, and a big upgrade on the cranking amps capacity. I guess the only worrying thing is it's got a 4-year warranty, and obviously I've taken a Dremel to the casing. I don't know whether you'd notice if you took it back under warranty, but as long as you look after a battery, the actual failure rate of a battery because of a warranty defect, manufacturing defect, is next to nothing. Batteries usually fail because they've been mistreated over the years, they've not been kept at the correct voltage, they've gone flat, they've been discharged. There's hundreds of reasons a battery goes flat other than a warranty defect. All we've got to do now, wheel back on, get the jack out, get it back down to the ground and have a bit of a tidy up because it's created a bit of a mess. Right, final step then, just to torque the wheels up. According to the Graham Varley manual, 70 to 80 foot-pounds, which is about 94 to 108 Newton meters. It also recommends rechecking them periodically. Right then, last thing to do, let's give it a start. I mean, it's been a couple of good 2-3 hours now, so it's just as cold as it was first thing this morning. Immobiliser still working, which is brilliant. Oh, that certainly turned over much quicker than before. Right, there we go, all done, all finished, new battery fitted. Got to be honest, it's not that easy of a job to do. A battery is typically quite an easy job to do on cars, but yeah, a little bit more tricky on the TVRs just because of where they're located. And yeah, had a little bit of a problem with the height of that battery standoff. So had to do a bit of fettling, but I'd rather do that and get the battery fully secured in rather than having it moving around for peace of mind. So yeah, pleased with the outcome of that. If you enjoyed today's video, please remember to give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, please do consider subscribing, and I'll catch you again on the next one. Cheers.